There is the man, the myth, the legend, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. It should be there somewhere. He's for everybody that's just joining the YouTube chat. Ben is in a different part of the country right now, so so he's getting his stuff set up over there, and we will start it on. We're going to start minus Ben, minus the most important man, and we are going to start this minus the most important man in this show because it is called The World According to Ben Stein. And I want to welcome everybody that's watching on YouTube, that downloads the podcast, that is a supporter of us, to The World According to Ben Stein. We're joined tonight by the SimpleLifeNow.com founder. And you're not just what was that ad they used to have, Gary? I'm not just a client, but I'm not just the president, but I'm also a client, for the hair club.
The hair club. Hey,
yeah,
hey, don't.
You actually
plus years old. It's all there.
You actually live the life of what you write and what you speak about. And Gary Collins from the SimpleLifeNow.com, and Ben, for everybody watching, will be joining us in a few seconds. But before we even start, I want to talk about quickly, because I'm a huge baseball fan, Gary. I got to be honest.
Why?
I've been a huge baseball fan since I'm a kid. I just love baseball. I must have watched at least 90 games last year. A lot of that had to do with the pandemic, mind you. But I did watch a lot of baseball, and baseball has 7.6 black. A minority of blacks in baseball, and they are now banning the All-Star game. It's been moved from Atlanta, Georgia, a town that seriously needs the revenue, that is a majority African American who could use the money, who could use the jobs, and they are putting it because of voter integrity laws, moving into a place like New York that has even harsher. What say you, Gary?
Well, after the second strike, I grew up a baseball fan as a kid too, big sports fan. I was done. So when was that? 1902. They've had so many strikes now. I've lost track.
94, I believe.
Yeah, that was actually that was when I said enough. And we're in a woke world. Corporations. And I'll ask you what you think of this, because me and a friend were making a comparison of now athletic companies such as bike companies. When you see the ads and the posters, it's a bunch of overweight people on bikes. And I'm not fat shaming. I am fat shaming, by the way. But if what we are saying is it's representing, what they're doing is they're advertising to the representative of the demographic of the US, right?
Right.
I think you kind of tie those two together, right? So what they're doing is they're going, well, corporate America's customer, a large portion of them believe in, that this is a racist and against voter integrity, but it's the opposite. And that's what I mean. What they're doing is they're placating to the mass is what they're doing.
Right, but not the community that watches the sport.
They don't care. That's what I mean. Corporate
right.
America.
So if you look at it last year, their numbers, I believe 8 million people watched the All-Star game. Now, I don't know. I'm assuming baseball is one of the least betting sports that people bet on. But, the ratings this year at the All-Star game, what are they hoping to go from 8 million? There's this effect, that cause and effect. You have less advertising dollars. You have less of all these things that'll go on. But you have fans like me who are just numb to it.
Remember, even before this, there was a big hubbub, I can't remember how many years ago, about that blacks weren't represented enough in baseball.
Yeah, there was a huge thing going on.
And someone ran it, and they said, well, because the majority of blacks don't play baseball. That's the sport they least play as kids. And going up, that is why. And they didn't want to hear it. They're like, no, it's racist. It's just racist. And you're
right. And how are we going to get more blacks? Like, you could force somebody to play a different sport you know, you know, I mean, it's just a massive joke. I agree with Rockruth, who says, I mean, I'm not this massive boycott person, like screaming boycott, but I am in my own life saying, you know what, I'm not going to pay $120 for the MLB ticket. It's definitely an expense. I'm not going to waste my time. I mean, watching games right now is like, remember those Benetton commercials in the 80s? You know, like, you know, it feels like watching like a demented Benetton commercial watching these games. And I can't, you know, a lot of people could separate once they turn it on, but knowing reality, I can't, me as a human, I can't differentiate.
Well, not only that, but you're watching basically a bunch of coddled athletes who are some of the richest people in the world, and they're screaming discrimination and all these crazy racist things and kneeling during the national anthem. And I laugh as a former guy who served in the military who made $300 a month when he was, you know, first year in the Navy as a young, bright-eyed 20-something-year-old. And I'm looking at some multi millionaire who cries racism and says Black Lives Matter. And if you don't say that, you're a racist. And I just go, what planet are we living on? You know, I don't even know anymore. I gave up on pro sports a long time ago. I think they're just a bunch of spoiled babies, the athletes. Not all of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. And you know, the big the NFL, the NBA, especially the NBA, who kowtows to China, our biggest adversary. It's embarrassing. I haven't watched pro sports for years now. I just don't care.
And there he is, the
There he
man,
is.
the myth, the legend, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. You got to turn your audio on, Ben. Ben, you would have Jeff, if you could turn Ben's audio on, that would be amazing. And we will do a mic check with Ben in a second.
There.
But there he is.
I am now, sir.
There you are, Benjamin Jeremy Stein, America's humble servant. And I want to welcome
everyone. Can you see me, Judah?
I can see you, Ben Stein. Through the amazing thing of technology, I can see you. And Ben is on the road somewhere with beautiful pictures behind him.
I can tell you where I am because it's quite a famous place.
Where
I'll tell you where I am.
Okay, that's a smart idea, Ben.
It's kind of interesting.
And to everybody that just tuned in, you are watching The World According to Ben Stein. Gary and I were just doing some fill until Ben came. But Gary, the reason I bring up sports is, and the All-Star game, and I spoke to Ben about this today, was because Ben and his father, me and Ben's father share that in common. We love listening to the baseball on the radio. It was a special thing for us.
And my father watched on TV, but didn't turn on it. But just, I mean, he was crazy about it.
Yeah, and how sick to his stomach. For people that don't know, Ben's father was an extremely high figure in the United States government for he got to serve two different presidents, right? Two or three. Three, he got to serve three presidents. And would he be disgusted, Ben, with the fact that Major League Baseball is literally causing a state to lose millions of dollars for the people that they supposedly care about?
He would be disgusted at the whole thing. I mean, I think my father was a man who was way ahead of his time in terms of advocating for civil rights for African Americans. He, unlike most of the people of his generation, he had white people of his generation, if you can call Jews white, he had black friends, and he would be so horrified at the way the blacks have twisted the situation and made it seem as if they're being discriminated against, when they're really tightening the screws on everybody else. And I don't think the ordinary African American is doing that. I think it's the politicians. I think it's the fundraisers. I think it's the people who are getting money out of it. Always cherche the money, and that's where the story is.
You know, but I want to ask you this both. I don't get I get why they're doing this, right? You have voter ID laws. Less people might be apt to go vote in person. It takes away the cheat by mail, which we know for sure has had issues in past elections. And we know that that's their biggest reason for doing it. But, I mean, Ben, it's at a certain point, most people have to see that they're being disingenuous. I would think.
It's wildly disingenuous. I mean, the Wall Street Journal, a wonderful, wonderful newspaper still, it's not just on the editorial page, has pointed out in detail what the Georgia voting law entails. It's nothing remotely discriminatory, not even remotely by any stretch of the imagination discriminatory. It's just as to, are you a citizen? Do you exist? Are you of voting age? Are you in prison? Do you live in the state of Georgia? It's crazy. That by itself is supposed to be discriminatory. How can that possibly be discriminatory? It only can be if there's a way for Black Lives Matter and other people to make money or political power off it. It has no reality in fact.
To go to the store, Gary, and pick up medicine,
Yep.
you need to show ID. I mean, and everybody's getting
Absolutely. And Judah, my wife and I are both not in great health. Neither, especially my wife. And Judah often goes and gets medicine for us. He has to show identification. Everybody has to show identification for everything in the world. You have to show identification. Use a credit card at a lot of stores. But to vote, that's what people sacrifice their lives for on Iwo Jima and all over Europe. And you're not supposed to have to do that.
That's what somebody like Gary sacrificed his life for and served our country for. I mean, people forget. I want to bring this. I want to say this. You actually served, this country through 2 administrations. Gary served over 20 years. Gary, this must drive you nuts as a person that.
Absolutely insane. And here's why. The same people who are saying that in order to go get, who want to go get a free vaccination, have a vaccination passport. Well, guess what you're going to have to show in order to do those things? You have to show an ID. And yet those same people want to go vote without showing an ID. In order to get your free benefits and your food stamps, whatever, I'm just saying this in general, not pointing one out. You have to show ID. I'm confused by all this, why an ID is racist, economic, you're going against the poor.
I can tell you why it's racist. It's racist because they say it's racist in order to win elections, in order to squeeze money out of the corporate power structure and out of the citizens of America. And can I add something else? Because which occurred, I just came in from a long flight from LA to Washington D.C. And something suddenly occurred to me as I was sitting on my plane. I had just read a story, and I'm sure Judah has been talking about this, and he should. God bless you, Judah. Corporate executives, sometimes African American ones, are saying they're going to move their corporate events out of Georgia because they say it's racially discriminatory. Well, guess what? They don't own those corporations. Those corporations are owned by the stockholders. The stockholders get to decide, not the executives. A big company like Merck or American Express has an African-American CEO. That guy does not own the company. It's owned by tens of millions of small shareholders, many of whom have it in their retirement accounts. It's not up to these guys who are the executives to decide how their corporations weigh in on public issues. It's up to the stockholders.
You can't argue against that, Ben. You can't.
You can't argue against that. It's interesting. For years and years and years, before Judah and I became friends, and we're very, very close friends. Before that, I spent most of my life helping Larry Klayman. I'm kidding, not Larry Klayman. Helping people sue to get the executives of companies to stand up for the stockholders and not for themselves, and not to loot the company. In essence, these guys who are saying, get our corporations out of it at Georgia, they are standing up for their own political views and their own claims for virtue signaling, as a very close friend of mine calls it. And that is an outrage. It's an outrage. Those corporations don't belong to the executives. They belong to you and me and tens of millions of other Americans who have them in their savings and retirement portfolios.
Well, the thing is, they're not even looking at the facts. You know, no one's discriminating against anyone to vote. They're just saying you must.
Absolutely right. Totally right.
I don't understand how an ID became so controversial. I just don't understand this. Well, I do.
It became controversial, Gary, my dear friend, because they made it controversial in order to get. Wait, what's on your head, Judah?
My God, you just realized that, and I totally lost my signal, by the way. So I don't know what's been going on. Have you guys not
what
seen?
What do you have on your head?
I have that hat we got at the National World War II.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly right. So I just need to do a reset here quickly. I want to welcome everybody back to the world according to that man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. We are joined tonight by Gary Collins of simplelifenow.com. I've had some technical difficulties, so I had to restart the show. Rock Breath could tell me if you could see the stream is still going on, Rock Breath. That would be an amazing thing. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, Ben, was the fact that you wrote an amazing book called The Capitalist Code. Now, in that book that Warren Buffett gave major kudos to, just gave amazing, I mean, getting kudos from Warren Buffett about writing about the stock market is, to me, like getting Ted Williams telling you have an amazing swing. I mean, I can't think of a bigger compliment. But one of the things that when you wrote that book, and one of the things I read, Gary, out of that book, was that when you invest in a company, when you invest in Wall Street, when you're an investor, you are an owner in that company.
Right.
You have a say.
A passive witness. You're an owner.
You're an owner, and as you were, as you know, you posted today about that you have ownership in this company. People are like, sell and this and that and boycott. Not realizing, Ben, if you're an owner in a company, you could go to a shareholders meeting. You could get, if you have a problem, yes,
you can sue. That's the main thing. We have been on this show now for weeks, months, saying, what do we do to fight back? Guess what? Class action lawsuits against the management of these companies that are using their positions in order to advance their personal political agendas without regard to what is best for the stockholders. Fiduciary duty, incredibly important concept in law, says that the management of these companies must act in the best interest of the stockholders, not in the best interest of themselves. Fiduciary duty demands that these guys shut the F up about political issues unless they have a vote from the stockholders telling them to do it.
So, you know, as you say that, it really, like, I think about that, like, if it were me and everybody listening and everybody that wants to boycott Delta or boycott Coke or buy a share, just buy one share and get a guy like Larry Klayman, just get a class action lawsuit against these companies, because there is no way this is not going to affect the bottom line of certain companies. And we've had this conversation, Ben, where capitalism used to be the great equalizer. Companies are willing to lose some money these days in the name of wokeness.
I know. This is insane. The whole reason that we have the most prosperous country, a large country in the world, is that we have free enterprise. Free enterprise doesn't mean that these big corporations belong to Joe Smith or whatever his name is, who is the chief executive officer or the chief financial officer or some other officer. If they belong to the stockholders, I am sure that every man, woman, child watching this show tonight has directly or indirectly stock in Delta, Merck, Coke, and those people are being ripped off mercilessly by their management, because their management is saying our personal views take precedence over your financial well-being. That is nonsense. is exactly the opposite of what corporate America is supposed to be doing.
And just so the people in the attendance know, Ben was part of a lawsuit when when COVID first started. That was brought by Larry Klayman. I believe it was for the churches, for not being able to congregate.
Right. Because one of my closest friends is a Southern Baptist minister, and he the LAPD, in my hearing, he did it on the phone in my office. Told him, you can't have a church service even if you only have 5 people in the service.
And the biggest problem,
Michael,
the biggest problem, Michael, right now, and I'll go to Gary in a second, is the biggest problem, Michael, is that you can't get your cases heard. There's such a backlog in the state of California right now that to get these class action lawsuits, but it's still, as Ben always says, you don't give up hope. You find the one judge, Gary, who will you can't, boycotting is what the left does. You buy one share, Gary, in a certain company, you're part owner.
Well, yeah.
Right, and you have Gary, if you and I and Judah each own 100 shares of Merck or Coca-Cola or Delta, we have as much legal right to go into court and demand that the management act on behalf of the stockholders instead of on behalf of what he wants to do himself or herself. We have just as much right as the person who's got $1 billion worth of shares.
Yeah, I'm not a boycott person either. But we're at a point where we have to start making big boy decisions as consumers. And, we're going to have to make some tough choices. The problem is most of America is tuned out, doesn't care. They're going to buy
most Americans, what, Gary? I'm sorry, say that again.
They're tuned out. They don't care. They're going to go buy their 12 pack of Coke, pound it, and, eat Twinkies and whatever. But most Americans, for me, I will never buy a Coke again, to be honest with you. I'm over it. I don't drink Coke to begin with very much, but I'm over it. I'm to the point where these companies, if they want to dictate politics and be political, I'm out. I don't want politics, just give me a Coke and shut up and smile, right? I'm done with it. Why are these corporations even involved in politics, Ben? I don't even get it. What is
because I'll tell you why, my dear friend. Because they want to get invited to parties where the cool people hang out. They want to get invited to parties where the pretty girls hang out. At least that's what they think. They want to get invited to places where the cool, beautiful people go. There's a wonderful song, I think only I am old enough to remember, called How Does It Feel to Be One of the Beautiful People? It's a song by the Beatles. And that's how these corporate guys are. They're basically accountants. They're bean counters. They want to be cool people. And so how do they be cool people? They get woke. And so they get woke. But wait a minute. What about their stockholders? Well, fuck the stockholders. We want to be woke.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing to me. You're totally right. And, I've owned stock in several companies too over the years, and I get to vote every year, right? We get our package. I get it emailed to me and I get to vote. I get to, I don't know what this is anymore. I feel...
I want to get back to something, Ben, and I think this is really important because a lot of people don't know this. And I'm going to use his name, only his first name, who's in our chat. They weren't aware that by owning one stock, at that point, and so many people do not know this. And I really need you to reinforce that when you own a stock, Ben, at that point,
100 shares is better, but just one is enough.
And so
one share, and you're the owner, and you are the successor to legal rights of all the owners, and you have every right to go into court and demand that the court order the executive of the corporation to stop acting like it's his own company and to instead act like he is a servant of the stockholders. That's vital. That's how capitalism works. If you don't have that, you don't have capitalism. If you don't have that, you have Venezuela or Cuba or something like that. You don't have American capitalism.
Well, that's the problem, though, right? Aren't we in pretty much crony capitalism anywhere? I mean,
well, even in crony capitalism, the stockholders get to go into court and the courts can jam their gears. The courts can go into court, can say, you stop it, Mr. X or Mr. Y or whatever your name is, and you keep your opinions to yourself, or if you're stating your opinions about some kind of political issue, you make it clear you're speaking only for yourself and not for Coca-Cola or for Merck or for Delta or whoever else it is. You make it clear that you're doing it for yourself. And these guys, by the way, these corporate executives, they're supposed to be so smart. I've known lots of them. They're not that smart. They're not smart enough to read the law in Georgia. That law isn't even wildly discriminatory, even remotely discriminatory.
Well, I got a question. Where is the All-Star game going to, Judah?
Yeah, I believe it's going to New York City, and who has, like I shared before, who has even tougher restrictions on a voter ID. I hate it's such a. Can I say something? I can't use these words anymore because they're ridiculous. To say voter ID laws and it's like we sound like morons as a country that we're even discussing. And no, I mean, really? We have to discuss it because this is the battle we're up against, Ben. But it's redonkulous that this is even a conversation.
Because we are a country that's gotten ever stupider because the media is dumbing us down all the time. You know, it's interesting. I had a conversation 2 days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, and very recently, with a doctor who said every time if you are a heavy user of marijuana, or even a frequent user, it just automatically knocks 10 points off your IQ. If you use it more than occasionally, it's more than that. I think watching media, watching MSNBC, watching CNN knocks more than 10 points off your IQ every time you watch it. And if you watch it all the time, you don't even know whether you're coming or going. And that's the situation we're in America. We have been brainwashed into not knowing what our rights are. Republican Party, you're the party of big business, supposedly. You're not really, but you supposedly are. Why don't you get somebody out there to say, Americans, you have IRAs, you have Kios, you have 401ks, you are stockholders, you have rights. Please exercise your rights. Write a letter to the Wall Street Journal. Write a letter to the New York Times will publish it. Write a letter to somebody. Maybe USA would publish it. USA Today. Write to somebody saying we don't want to be the stooges for these people and their political views. We want to have our views represented. We're the owners.
And somebody brings up, Gary, a great point that 70% of Americans, I mean, want there to be normal voting. I'm not even calling it anything anymore. They simply want normal voting, 70% of America. You know, you bring your ID in, you sign a little thing, and you poke the dot. That's what most people want, Gary.
Well, the thing is, I remember at 7 years old, my dad got me a Social Security card. That was kind of the thing when we were young, growing up, that as you became old enough, your parents would go get your Social Security card so you were established. He wasn't getting out credit cards or anything that I know of under my name or anything. And, that was my ID as a 7-year-old. I already had an ID as a 7-year-old. I had to use that ID when they opened a bank account for me, a joint bank account as a teenager. This is asinine. This is so ridiculously stupid. And with pro sports, I wish some people would go out there who have a little bit of money, start new leagues that where the players actually, instead of complaining and bitching, go out and play for the game. They get
I want to tell you something, Gary. That's the next segment. And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to that man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein, who I must ask, you might turn your phone off so we don't sound like we're walking into an Asian massage parlor every few seconds.
What's that? I don't think I have my phone on.
It is. I hear the chimes. And I want to remind everybody.
With all due respect, I don't think you are.
I could be wrong. And I want to remind everybody.
That's my stripper.
The large apartment.
My stripper's ankle bracelets. I'm sorry.
I want to remind everybody to get Ben's newsletter, benstein.substack.com, and to find our podcast at The World According to Ben Stein, wherever podcasts are downloadable. And of course, give us a good like, give us a good review if you don't mind. It would be very helpful. We're humbled by your support. But I want to welcome everybody back to the world according to Ben Stein. And Gary brings up a great point, Ben. But the problem is baseball, and I want you to explain this to people, what the antitrust laws are, because a lot of people are unfamiliar with that, and baseball is exempt from the antitrust laws.
Right. The antitrust laws passed when under sponsorship of a Senator Sherman, but not the same Sherman who marched from Atlanta to the sea. These laws said that you could not own a certain large percentage of the market in any kind of corporation or any kind of production or service, so that you could control the price. Now, in Major League Baseball, they do, in the Major League Baseball leagues and owners do control a huge, enormous, overwhelming percentage of professional baseball, but the Congress has exempted them from the laws governing antitrust. Why should they be exempt? I mean, they're acting like thugs, they're acting like gangsters. Why should they be exempt from anything now? They're not a wholesome pastime like they maybe once were. Maybe once were. They are now just thugs working on behalf of a political party that seems to embrace thuggery.
So what Gary brought up, it would be nearly impossible because of those laws for another team, for another league to try and start up. Am I correct? I mean, is that?
No.
Unless they start a different kind of game. I mean, they can call it something else maybe and have it be a different kind of game. But clearly, the Major League Baseball would be almost impossible to compete with. And yet, and by the way, same is true in terms of the internet and high tech. We have massive antitrust violations, gigantic ones going on all the time. We have capitalism is being defeated by the capitalists. It's being defeated by, I mean, Marx himself could not have thought of a more ironic and cruel end to capitalism than the capitalists killing capitalism, but that's what they're doing.
Well, and I've heard a lot of theories about that we're playing right into our adversaries' hands because we're doing exactly what their strategy was. It's not that you beat us through wars, you have us attack each other. That's the best way to do it. And that's what we're doing. And my attitude is with sports, it's like I threw off some pretty wicked snipes in Twitter this week about college players being paid. And I blew a gasket. I had to pay for my shitty college education. And yet these guys get free room and board. Has anyone been in a college sports dorm before? It's nicer than my house. It's ridiculous. They eat at different meals. They live in high-end apartments or dorms, whatever they want to call them. They all got tattoos. They all, it's bullshit. I'm tired of this whole thing. They've integrated sports into now, almost pay to play because NCAA is so corrupt. It all ties together. I firmly believe, call it man ball and have guys go out there and actually play real baseball and no corporate sponsors. How about that? How about the people own the teams like the Green Bay Packers? Let's go back to that. How about the fans in the actual town or city where these teams are at own the team? Let's do that.
But let's face it, what we're talking about here is something that I'm sorry to say, we talk about way painfully too much in this program, and that is that the left controls so much. Now they control sports. I mean, they just control very, very much of this country. Now, don't get me wrong. Our friend Remso, a very smart guy, Remso, miss him very much tonight, but Remso, super smart guy, points out things are pretty darn good in this country. I was just at the airport at LAX and also at DCA, jam-packed. Travel has revived. The travel recession is long over. So economically, things are looking up. Politically, disaster. So
and things are looking up
we're not
now.
going to go together. What? Sorry.
Things are looking up now economically, but you're the one that keeps on talking about if we continue on this stream of spending,
Yes, it's got, unless every law of economics that has ever been postulated is wrong, and it's possible that they are, that's quite possible, then we're about to have very serious inflation, and it's going to hurt like hell.
And by the way, Gary, you bring up a great point, because if I encourage everybody to watch this documentary on Netflix called "The Battered Bastards of Baseball," and it's with Kurt Russell, and it's about his dad owning a minor league, an affiliate baseball team in Oregon, and how he had to go to court against Major League Baseball because he was a part of what there used to be known as independent leagues, and they were all over the country. There were thousands, and I believe now there might be one or two independent leagues, because what does baseball do? They squash you like a little bug they think you are, to quote Ben, or to quote Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, they squash you like a cockroach. And that is what they do. And Ben, what is the outcome? What is the inflationary outcome? What are people?
We don't know what the inflationary outcome is yet. We don't seem to be following the normal laws of economics. If we were, we'd already have considerable inflation. But it would be, as I say, unless everything that we've ever been taught about economics and everything in the history of economics is wrong, and it's possible it is. It's very possible it is. We're going to have some fairly serious inflation. And for those of you out there in the land of world according to Ben Stein who are looking at houses, you're already seeing fairly serious inflation. For those of you who, like yours truly, do the grocery shopping for the family, you're already seeing some fairly serious inflation. Will you continue to see serious inflation? I don't know. But what I do know, well, it get worse, I should say. What I do know is, whatever the situation is in terms of the economy, and to me it looks very dicey and threatening, but as I say, I'm often wrong. Certainly, we are losing our rights under the Constitution. That is unequivocally clear, no matter what the statistics say about the economy, and they're good, and I'm really happy that they're good. We are losing our freedom of speech, and that is a scary thing. I don't know if you've already hit this before I got signed on. Should I apologize? But there's a story running on the internet today about how the governor of Vermont, now Vermont is a beautiful, beautiful state. There's no two ways about that. It's a beautiful state. Vermont has a governor who has said that African-American people and people who identify as gender fluid, or some whatever the expression
and
indigenous.
Indigenous, I saw that.
And indigenous people, that's right, will get preference in terms of getting the COVID vaccine over ordinary people. This is crazy. This is just crazy. This is pure National Socialism.
Well, they're fighting racism with racism. It's asinine.
Well, National Socialism was a political party basically based on racism.
What's also comical about it is it's like, I believe Delaware is like 3% minority. So
no. Vermont. You're talking about Vermont.
Vermont. I meant Vermont. Sorry, I meant Vermont.
Delaware is very much minority.
I meant Vermont, and which is where so it's very bold of him to do that, and very woke of him to make this proclamation. But you're right, it's freaking insane that this is even being it's almost like, I don't even know what it's almost like, because I've never seen anything like this in my life. It's almost like, will all the Jews please, we are getting into a frightening place, and I don't know how we get into it. Somebody brought up a great point in the chat. Communism in China and communism has always been about the long game, and the left has played the long game far better than we could have ever have dreamed of it. They got into the universities decades ago, Ben, and they have played the long game better than we could have ever. We fell asleep.
We fell asleep, and also we have very, very, very poor educational system in this country. I mean, what young people do not know about what it took to keep this country free and to win World War II is terrifying. I mean, people think, oh, we got an war, John Wayne, flew a plane around for a while, and the Nazis threw up their hands, and Hitler committed suicide. It was an incredible struggle. Horrible numbers of Americans died. Let's give them credit. The Red Army did most of the fighting, and they really took some horrible, horrible losses. But it was a big, big struggle to preserve freedom for Western Europe and for the United States of America. Why are we now tossing that away? That freedom we have now that we take for granted, that's more basic than corn, it's more basic than oil, it's more basic than a roof over our heads. It's the most basic, most important thing in our lives, and we're tossing it away. How could this governor of Vermont, who must be the dumbest jerk in the history of the world, say that he's going to explicitly embrace racism in terms of giving out medical care? How could that be? Could you imagine when Lyndon Johnson proposed Medicare? Could you imagine if he said, and Black people are going to get coverage first? Could you imagine that? Can you imagine?
Here's the,
by the way, sorry.
No, I was going to say, here's the irony, Ben, is that Blacks are the least likely of people to go get the vaccine because the COVID vaccine, or many things with doctors, because they don't trust doctors. They've been experimented on in the past. We know that. And for a governor of a state to say, Black people, you're going to get this vaccine first, I would imagine to someone
run to the hills. They're all, I'm out of here.
Yeah, like I would imagine if you were Black and you heard that you're going to be the first to get this vaccine and you're going to be first in line, Ben or Gary, I would imagine you'd be a little scared to go.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't know if that's true or not. It's definitely an interesting thought. But what is definitely true is it is racialism. America is now where South Africa was before the end of apartheid, where everything's being apportioned on the basis of race. To me, when I see President Biden and Vice President Harris say, we're going to apportion the top jobs in America on the basis of race instead of in terms of basis of merit or skill or capability or hard work, that is the end of America. We're walking down the path that's going to take us over a cliff into a Marxist, racialist state. And it's a very scary cliff to go over. I love America the way it is. I don't want it to change at all in any significant way. How these people can be thinking that they're going to embrace racialism and also claim that they are the anti-racist, where do they think they are? I mean, how dumb? Well, I was going to say how dumb do they think we are, but all you have to do is watch MSNBC or the other networks for a few seconds, and you see how dumb we are.
Gary?
Well, it's interesting too, in a sense of what they've done, which is masterful, right? It's making you look over here when you should be looking over here. And, you know, I'm a health guy. And what they've done is they've made us more afraid of the flu than being obese. And we've become far more obese in a very short period of time than any time in history, actually. And obesity is killing far more many people in this country, and the after effects and all the other health conditions that go along with it than COVID ever will, period. And matter of fact, the number one determinant of you dying of COVID is obesity. So
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I'm very, very glad to hear that. Hear you inform me of that, because I am myself a wild overeater, and I'm glad you told me about that, and I thank you.
Well, the statistics, they've been very sly in, especially if you watch MSNBC and it's crazy land. I consider myself a very neutral, balanced individual. I've tried watching CNN, and it's nutty land. They just lie. They just say anything they want, and people will believe it. It is a fact. 80% of the people who have died from COVID are, I may have the age wrong in America, but I know in most of the world, it's around 80, 82. Obese, elderly, with multiple health conditions, like 5, that they could die at any moment from anything. They could die from a cold. And that's what I mean. No one's looking at the facts. Obesity in this country, we went from right around 30%, because the statistics aren't quite right, because last time they really did it was around 2016. but 2018, they did kind of a light version of it at the CDC. Right now, we're at 50% of Americans are obese. That just happened. That big leap just happened in the last 12 to 18 months. They predicted 50% of Americans would be obese in 2030. We just jumped a decade in obesity. No one's talking about it. No one gives a shit, because to solve the problem, like I always say, there's no money in healthy people. There's none. There's a shitload of money in really unhealthy people. That's the gravy train. And I lose my mind. Ben, I want to ask you for your flight. I refuse to fly right now. I just won't do it, just because of, and I don't feel like flying in Russia right now. How was it flying over? Did you have to wear a mask the entire time in the airport and on the plane?
Yes, I did, and I didn't like it, but I did it. And I was, to be honest about it, I was sleeping 90% of the time, and so it wasn't really a big problem for me. I would occasionally have children walking by and saying Bueller, Bueller to me, but I was sleeping, so it didn't really matter. But I was, it was fine. It was fine. The airport was very, very, very crowded, extremely crowded. The recession is over as far as travel is concerned. The economy in general is reviving incredibly fast. And by the way, that's another interesting thing. As I've said here, I'm an economist. I studied economics in a serious way. And although we now know that a lot of what we thought was economic law is not law, but no economist in America would say that you could have had a turnaround like the turnaround we've had in the last couple of months, just suddenly. It was all groundwork laid by President Trump. He did all the spade work, and now we're reaping the rewards. Does Trump get any thanks for it? Of course not. But Biden has done absolutely nothing to cause this recovery. Trump did it all, almost all, and he gets no credit for it at all. He's out to dry somewhere.
But you raise a great point, though, because it's almost like, and getting back to a sports analogy, there's often times where a team, like it used to be like in the NCAA, right? Or where the coach would recruit great players. Or some coaches are great recruiters, they get great players, and then that coach goes on to a different school, and he leaves another coach some really good players. So that new coach will have a good year or two, but by year 3, that coach is like now 9-22 because he wasn't a great recruiter, which scares me to death with the economy, because we saw what Obama did with the economy and how it stalled and how it was slow. That Biden inherited, Ben, this amazing recovery, and we know he's going to do shit with it.
I don't know if he will do shit with it, because I don't think he knows which end is up, and I don't think he'll do anything one way or the other. What I do know is that I have a very sweet granddaughter named Coco. I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember whether she's 10 or 11, but she's a very, very, very sweet girl, an absolutely sweet girl. Her father, my son, and my wife's my son, is a very, very sweet boy. They're going to inherit an indebtedness that is just breathtaking, and it scares me to death for them. They didn't do anything to deserve it. When I see the $1.9 trillion so-called COVID recovery bill, very little of it has to do with COVID. It's a sop to the unions. It's sop to all the political pals of the Democrats. It's not going to do anything to help the COVID recovery. The COVID recovery is already way, 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 way down the track. They don't need to do anything at all for it at this point.
Okay, so I want to get to something else quickly, because you brought it up.
I want to get to live and date in LA. Where's that?
Hold on, I got to comment what Ben said. Let's be honest. Joe Biden doesn't even know where his pants are, let alone anything else. But it appears also Hunter Biden doesn't know where his pants are, because Russians took him from him, and it was a teenage girl around somewhere. I want to talk about this just real quick. Did anyone see that clip of Hunter Biden's answer to the laptop?
No, I want to see about this.
Oh my God. He literally blamed it. He goes, it could be Russia collusion. She goes, is it your laptop? Maybe. I don't know. Could be not. The Russians could have taken it. I heard these answers and I went, it's a yes or no question, Hunter Biden. Was that your laptop? and he literally went into Russian collusion, and maybe the Russians, maybe someone stole it. That's the place we're at today. And guess what? His dad is running the country. You should
Hey,
be
wait.
scared to death.
His dad is a hologram.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
They run
In
the
theory.
country. The country, we don't, the
Oh,
scary
what is that thing?
my
What is
dear
that thing
friend
they
Gary,
use?
We don't
What is
know
it?
who's running the country. We don't know who's running the country. I think actually at this point, most of us are running it, but it looks to me as if Nancy Pelosi is running it a lot. It looks to me as if Chuck Schumer is running it. I don't know who's running it. And by the way, maybe nobody's running it. Maybe we're just all doing a little bit of it ourselves. And meanwhile, the government is adding gigantic amounts of tax burden to us.
I think you raise a great point, and it's a frightening point. It's a frightening thing to think about it. That look at the border. We know nobody's running that.
Nobody's running. Well, the cartels are running.
Other than the cartels,
Cartels are 100% running.
Other than the cartels, we know we're not doing anything. We know as far as defunding the police in many states, we know many states are under, or that people have to protect and defend themselves. So you raise a great point.
And they're not allowed to. If some bunch of gangsters comes out on your lawn and starts taunting you and threatening you, and you take out a gun, even if you don't shoot, even if you just hold the gun in your hand, you get prosecuted. That's where America is today.
Oh, we are in some. It's very scary. And somebody said I look high. It's because I am sitting in front of a red Target sign where it might be making my eyes look a little red. Thank God I haven't gotten high in a long time. But I wanted to bring up something you brought up today, Ben, because it's really important to talk about, because I don't think people realize the effects of what weed is doing to the younger generation. I really don't think they realize how strong it is. It's so much stronger than it was in your generation. It's so much stronger than it was in my generation. And somebody brought up this thing where Gary, they said, I was reading, some of the comments that you posted. Somebody said, well, what about the troops that are coming home that, have gone through, major trauma and stuff? And I was thinking to myself, weed is probably the worst drug in the world if you're having delusions and paranoia. It might be for me, it was for a person with eating issues and sometimes some depressive issues. Weed was the worst drug in the world for me, Ben. It gave me the munchies and it made me paranoid.
And yet the Democrat Party cheers from the rafters when people are saying, let's legalize marijuana all over the country. What are they talking about? Marijuana is poison. It's poison. It's a gateway drug. Meanwhile, you know what I say? I'm an old man. I'm 76 years old. A lot of my friends are pretty old too. And they have diseases. They have diseases that cause incredible pain, and they need pain-killing medication. They're not there. These are old guys. They're playing canasta. They're playing mahjong. They're not going out and having rave parties. They need painkillers. They're not getting them. But the young people can get all the dope they want to get as high as they want. That's nuts.
And we're not talking, by the way, there is a difference between being in the hospital. If you have cancer and you need something to soothe the pain, God bless you. Smoke. I would do whatever the doctor says. I don't care if you need to smoke 2 bongs a night. If that takes away your pain from the cancer and you have some sort of, God bless you. But what we're talking about, Gary, is legalizing it for 18-year-old kids whose brains aren't fully formed, and kids are going to get it when they're 14. And we really have to start being honest. And I know you share some libertarian things, but on this one you're a little different, I think.
Well, a little bit. I firmly believe in the legalization of marijuana, just because the war on drugs isn't working. It never has. It's a farce. It has been a farce. It does nothing but incarcerate a lot of people who probably shouldn't be incarcerated. It creates the prison industrial complex. I mean, it's a big money making operation. With pot, here's my attitude. It's the same thing as with alcohol. If you're going to keep drug or marijuana illegal, well, so should alcohol. And if you're going to make pot legal for 18-year-olds, well, guess what? You better make alcohol legal for 18-year-olds too. When I was in the military, when I first started, we could drink beer on military bases at the E Club because we were 18. If we were 18 and we were in the military and we were on base, we were allowed to drink. If I can die for my country, I should be able to have a goddamn beer in the meantime. But with marijuana, I'm with you. It's a little tricky because if you said only, and we did see this, I saw this in California. If you get the medical community, big pharma involved and big Western medicine involved in marijuana, what we saw was you'd have to register. So now your name's on a list.
And then you can't own a gun. And then you can't own a gun.
Exactly. So it's a slippery slope there. And not only that, but they upcharged. So now that same marijuana that you used to be able to buy on the street for, $10 for a dime bag or whatever it was back then, now it's $50 from Dr. So-and-so who doesn't give two shits. He just wants you to buy drugs from him so he can make a bunch of money. It's tricky. It's tricky. I'm with you guys. I'm not for free range on all drugs all the time, but also we have to go to the source. Why are people taking, I see it every day. A lot of Americans drink themselves to a stupor. I go out every once in a while. I go have a few beers. There's a lot of escapism going on.
Ben brought this up the other day to me, Gary. He brought up, what is it that we are living in this society that all they want to do is escape, Ben? We were talking about this on the phone yesterday for probably, for quite a while.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm bound to cry when I drive by all the liquor stores in Los Angeles, and there's so many of them, so many gas stations that sell alcohol. And I think to myself, really, people, is your life that sad that you have to escape reality all the time? It breaks my heart. I mean, I'm very, very blessed. I have a home that has a wonderful view out over the Pacific Ocean. And I sit there and I look at that view, or sometimes I stand there and look at that view, and I think, wow, this is great. But anyone can go there. There are beaches, hundreds of miles of beach. You don't have to own a house in Malibu to see it. Why don't the people look at the ocean? Why don't they look at the sky? The other night I was looking at the stars above Malibu, and I thought to myself, why would you want to escape from this? This is perfection. This is God's gift to us all. Why do we want to escape from it?
But here's another thing that bothers me, and I got to be honest. And yes, weed to the people in chat does impair your driving. So you might be driving 20 miles an hour, but that could still cause an accident. But why is it the fight? I look at the fight sometimes on the left, right? They fight for abortion, which we know is a gateway to for people, a form of it's become a form of contraception, just
sure, my dear friend Judah, it's more than a gateway.
Yeah, but I'm saying, so we look at why is the left fighting? We look at the things they fight for, and weed is, I guess, Gary, I agree, is a slippery slope. Working in the rehab industry for years, I saw what weed did to people. I saw the devastation and the addicted, that belief that weed is not addicting is crap, is absolute crap. The thing is, I get that kids are going to do it. I get that people are going to do it, but we don't have to fight always to make it that something is okay. It's okay for things to not be okay. We don't want 15-year-old kids getting high. We don't want 16-year-old girls or 14-year-old girls getting abortions. It's something as a society, I get that they need it, whatever, but Ben, this fight for this stuff is sometimes frightening.
Let's think of it. I mean, and I'm going to have to now break my anonymity. I've been in a 12-step program now for about 33 years, and I see the incredible happiness that comes into people's eyes, and their happiness in their lives when they give up running away from reality and instead embrace reality and embrace the gift that God showers upon us day by day. I see that all the time, and I don't understand why people are running away from that. I mean, the gift, excuse me, I see when I look out at the sky and look at the ocean. Why are we running away from that? Well, the gift I see when I see the flag of the United States of America, that gift, I don't want to run away from that gift.
I couldn't agree with you more. I gotta be honest, Gary. Because Gary and I are both huge concert fans and sports fans. I used to think, because everybody always says, oh, you have to, I remember there was a movie that came out called Natural Born Killers, and everybody said you had to be high to watch it or to get it. And I was like, if you have to be high or something to get a movie, you shouldn't be. And I got to tell you, some of the greatest buzzes in my life. Sorry, Gary?
Never could finish it. I never got it.
Terrible.
Yeah.
And some of my greatest buzzes in life and the greatest thrills I've had in my life were because I was sober. The greatest concerts I've seen, I remembered them afterwards. I was able to share. I mean, it made the experience of, I was there. I was fully conscious and fully there. Now, sometimes in life, as Ben and I joke sometimes in the morning, I don't want to be fully conscious. I don't. But when that passes, and as they say sometimes, this too shall pass, that passing feeling, Ben, when you get out of yourself and you get out and you're past that depression, or you're past that fear, Gary, and you're living life, like you talk about, Gary, all the time, living life, living your actual life is an amazing way of living. It's fun.
Well, it's about living the life you want, not what you've been told to live. Therein lies the problem. And a lot of people today, they can't see beyond what they've been told to live. I mean, think if, you're working at Amazon seasonally, making $15 an hour, packing boxes all day, taping boxes 40, 50 hours a week, you're probably going to want to get high at the end of the day, to be honest with you. But I always teach people, well, how do you break out of that mold? How do you pursue the things you want to do? And for me,
I don't know, maybe you get out of that job and you learn to do something else. And I don't know what you do, but it is really, really sad. I must say, think of people spending all day long packing cardboard boxes for Amazon is a very scary thought. But on the other hand, there is dignity in work. My former boss, Mr. Nixon, used to say there's more dignity in working, emptying bedpans than there is in idleness.
And on that note, if you just tuned in, you've been listening to The World According to Ben Stein. Everybody is on location tonight. I am in front of a Target, and Ben is in Washington, and Gary is somewhere unknown. But we've discussed a lot of amazing stuff tonight. And one of the things I want to recap is, everybody that wants to boycott, that's not who we are. I mean, we're just not, but there is a way to fight back. And what we brought up, and I really think is buy one stock, class action lawsuits against these companies. Ben wanted to quickly talk about a segment that I wanted to get into quickly, which is my weekly to live and date in LA.
Yes, I want to hear it.
Sorry?
I want to hear it.
Well, the biggest thing I got to be honest that I keep on getting from people is, how conservative are you? Did you vote for Trump? It's like either I wear number 45 on my hat, or I must be like, the belle of the ball, but to like me than to ask me that question. And it's funny. Somebody in the chat mentioned they don't like to be called a racist. There is a certain point where it gets hurtful, that because of something you believe, you're a racist. And they know that that's hurtful. And to continually do things, and this goes to friendships too, Ben. You're friends with everybody. You've been friends with people that supposedly brought down your former boss, and you stay in constant contact with that person. You're friends with Norman Lear. Gary, I'm sure you have friends.
Norman is a dear friend.
And this idea that we can't date people with differing thoughts, that we can't be friends with differing thoughts, frightens me more, Ben, than anything I've ever seen before. And I've never seen it as bad as it is now, as I am doing my dating research, my dating recon. And it's heartbreaking, as far as wifey would say, heart-rending.
That's not an issue I face because I'm an old man. But for you young people, I would have to say, in a city the size of Los Angeles, Jude, I would think you would be able to find at least a few girls who would not mind that you had voted for Trump.
No,
I mean,
Ben, but think about it like this: you go on an app, you gotta
I
find
don't
that
even
one
know what
person.
an app is, so there you are.
It's the little thing, yeah, you know what it is, you know, and you think about all the variables that go into finding that person when you know, if 80% of the people openly say they won't date a Trump supporter, you probably have another 15% that are too scared to. Then you're left with 5% of a pool. And we've spoken about this. There are going to be a lot of single ladies at the age of 50 in major states in the next 15 or 20 years. There are going to be a lot of women that don't have families, that don't have these things. Hey, I could be 70 and have a kid, so that's my payback to you guys. But Ben, I'm just, you know, I look at you as a beacon of a person that has stayed friends with people, that has supported people, that has stayed loyal to people no matter what. And the fact that we've lost that in this country sometimes is that we're Americans. You know,
it's funny. I try to stay friends with everybody, and when I'm on the airplane, I greet everybody who walks down the aisle past me, and it's just part of my life to be friendly to everybody, and I'm going to keep on doing that. And I have no idea what I would do if I had to look for a girlfriend on a dating app. I would have no clue as to what to do. But I would say that some of the happiest moments I've ever had in my life have been with my dogs. And I don't think you can go wrong getting a German Shorthair Pointer or a Weimaraner.
And we're ending this, but this is a true story that actually happened, Gary. And some of you might have heard this story. This happened, God, maybe 15 years ago. Ben said to me, I just adopted a dog, a German Shorthair Pointer. Can you go to the Pointer Rescue and get him? True story. I'm standing there online as they're bringing people the dogs. And there's this one crazy dog that comes out. And I'm like, please, God, let not this be the one. And as I'm driving down there, Ben said to me on second thought, why don't you keep the dog?
But let's be fair. I said I would pay for 100% of the care.
He offered to pay 100%. So they bring him this one crazy ass dog, and they bring him past me. And I go, oh, thank God. And then they do another loop. And they go, this is your dog, which we ended up naming Nixon. And it was really funny when the dog would run away and I would be screaming Nixon in the canyons. But yes, that was a wonderful story. The dog was a little off, and you're right. Animals and all that stuff, Ben, are great, but we still need to learn how to live with humans. And I hope people that are listening tonight, you know, and Gary, I know you exude this, and Ben exudes this. I hope everybody that's listening tonight is, even after they come after you, you kill them with love. Kill people with love.
Absolutely. Okay, ready?
Kill people with joy. On that note, I want to thank Gary Collins from thesimpelelifenow.com. Gary has the best podcast other than this. I beg people to go and listen to it. He is awesome. I want to thank everybody that's been listening on YouTube. Remember, benstein.substack.com. You can find our Apple podcasts everywhere, our podcasts everywhere, including Apple. And of course, The World According to Ben Stein. You can find them on Parler at Ben Stein and at spectator.org. Ben, take us out.
When I was a lad and Shep was a pup, over mountains and meadows we'd roam. Just a boy and his dog, we were both full of fun. We grew up together that way. I remember the time at the old swimming hole when I would have drowned beyond doubt. But old Shep was right there. To the rescue he came. He jumped in and helped pull me out. But anyway, it's one of Elvis's first songs, and it's an incredibly great song. It's called Old Shep, and if you can listen to it.
And you met him at the White House.
You're pretty tough. What?
And you met Elvis at the White House.
I did. It was a great. I was having lunch with my father at the White House mess, which is where very high officials at the White House get to eat. I was not a high official, but my father was. And my father said, would you recognize Elvis Presley if he were sitting just a few feet behind you? And I said, well, of course. And he said, well, he is. And I said, no, that's impossible. And he said, well, just look very, very, very inconspicuously. So I turned around. There was Elvis Presley having lunch with Bob Haldeman. And my father said, don't bother him, don't bother him. And I got up and I walked over to him. And I said, Mr. Presley, everyone in the world is your fan, but I'm your biggest fan. And you know what he said, right? Thank you very much. Anyway, so that was great. So God bless you.
Have a great night, everybody. We will see you Tuesday night. Be safe. Have a happy Easter to everybody. Happy the remaining Passover to everybody. And just enjoy your bad selves. As Ben Stein would say. As Ben Stein would say. Have a great night.
Lula, she's my baby. Bebop-a-lula, I don't mean maybe. Anyway, good night.